So this is chapter 11. Whenever you have a question, feel free to jump in and we will probably try to answer. But this part of the lecture is very dry, so we will go through this by just try my best to explain some of the important concept that I want to deliver to you. So the concept of chapter 11 is very simple. It's describing the technology, the popular technology, and I would say the information here is slightly outdated, right? Does not give us information such as XML or JSON that much. The JSON, XML, you probably heard about those terms, are the internet now commonly used database object that we use to communicate through environment like Pythons or R, right? So that's important, but it's not in here. But this one provides you with information that a lot of computer science students will see in their environment. So basic architecture is very simple. We have a database, some kind of database there, and there's some sort of service. And what we were actually doing in the earlier tutorial about the DBA tutorial is trying to manage these services. And this service will receive requests from the client computer or client device to make a connection. So traditional, the most original form of the database connection is that we have this database system. Then the server will send a request to the database and get the result, and the result will be sent to a web server, and so we can access the database through the web server. In order to do that, there are a few programs need to work together to make sure things work together smoothly. So typically you have the DBMS working with a web server, and the DBMS will manage the relational database, and the web server can connect into other data stores. So that is typically what we doing. And this is actually the environment that when you are using Apex. Apex is the environment combined database management system and web server together. So they provide you with like a black box here. But when you are working with the PHP, you actually go to the web server. And so that is the typical architecture that we are using in a typical environment. Now, but of course, due to the fact that many different companies is trying to provide different type of database and different type of utility to connect into a database. So that creates something more like this one in an earlier time of database. This was like in the 1990s to early 2000. We have this environment, right? What happened here is most of the database management system will provide their native interface. So when you're using PHP, they have this OCI function. Those are the native interface used for the database management system to access. And Microsoft has their own. But and back then, most of the computers are running on the Windows environment. So Microsoft come up with this little interesting middleware called ODBC. And this middleware can now talk to all the relational database product, Oracle, Microsoft, and so on and so forth, as long as you know how to manage this ODBC, right? So that creates the age called ODBC, and ODBC becomes a standard now to see how much you can do with or database connectivity. So that is like in the early to the end of 1990. So through that, you can do a lot of database access and using different programs. And typically, you will write an application program, access to DBMS, and then go through some sort of architecture like this one, right? Nothing very, learnable from at this particular moment in time, at least from my perspective. So let's move in to see what else. The benefit of a relational database again is that everything you go to DBMS, you only need to issue SQL. Right? So that's tremendous benefit. I just cannot describe more because I actually lived through the time that we do not have SQL. And so back then, when you try to access data, you have to write program to do everything yourself. Then after you have SQL, you only need to write SQL. Much easier program. And you'll probably also heard about this term called API. they usually provide the interface for other program or browser so once you figure out how to use an API, then you can connect into that particular data source. And this is actually most of the AI program or data mining program are doing, so they can connect to the Facebook API. If you have a right to access their data, you can actually go directly to Facebook database. You can go through the Twitter. Twitter, I think, has a public handler, the API, so you can use API. So that's why a lot of people are doing text mining in Twitter, because Twitter does provide you with a very good access sample data that you can access directly. So a lot of people just, in recent years, connect to Twitter, download President Donald Trump's tweet, and try to analyze, is he in a good mood today, or is he hostile today? So that sort of analysis can be done in there. So the API is another, sort of like a way of accessing the database. And so with the API, now that we have some terminology to learn, this terminology is called the conformance level. Now, the best way to understand conformance level is the higher level you go, the more you can perform in the SQL language. So the lower level API can only perform simple database operations. Say, for example, the core API is the lowest level of the API. Can only do what? Connect into database, can execute SQL statement, and commit and rollback. That's it. If you don't do create table and do other things, no, you cannot do it. You can do that in the level 1. So it depends on what kind of API it provides to you. You can do your power to perform your job is different. So that's the different level of conformance is what they mean. And so there are also different level of the SQL grammar you can use or cannot use at different conformance level. Now this word is important when you are a buyer, right? So if you are a buyer, you want to buy from Salesforce, buy their API and say, okay, I want to access the Salesforce public data lake, some of the term they used recently. So they want to access your data lake through the Salesforce API. Can you tell me the price for different conformance level? The higher level you go, the more expensive, of course, because the higher level you can go, the more you can perform in terms of the database operation. The most basic one, of course, is retrieving, probably insert data, update data. But more advanced one, you can create user privilege and try to do more sophisticated management in different levels. So that's conformance level. I emphasize on the term because it has a significance in terms of when you are in the position in a company try to buy contract accessing their data, right? You need to know these terminology. Right, so the rest of the chapter, they were actually talk about the textbook sample environment, how to set up the ODBC in the Microsoft environment. And since we are using the Oracle environment, I will not go to the example they have here. But the process is kind of comparable to our DBA tutorial in that environment. Right. So this chapter, I'll just stop here. And when you take the quiz of this particular chapter, you will learn a lot of these terminology, ODB, ADO.NET, and just try to kind of familiar yourself with those terminology will be good enough, right? Because ADO.NET, the .NET environment, obviously Microsoft kind of product, so provide some access to different level. So you have the OLE, another earlier version of the .NET. Prior to .NET, Microsoft created another one called OLE DB. So you don't need to use the native interface anymore. You can use and later on become the ADO.NET. So those are the Microsoft environment. In Oracle, of course, will be different, and that is the service that we were configuring. And so this is ADO, that further improvement from the previous version, and that's the terminology you need to learn. And after that, you will learn some more terminologies such as XML, the Java, the DB, that sort of thing. All these are different standards connecting to database, and you can issue query through your program or through your device or whatever to do the management job. So a very broad chapter, throw a lot of this terminology to you, and just knowing the terminology and know their their role is to help you to access to database, access to variety of database. Yeah, I think the complexity is this because there are just too many database out there. So when you are in a situation, you have to access multiple database. Now that becomes the problem. How to select these interface or these connectivity program so you can use. So ADO has that benefit. A lot of the connection can be simplified. Well, in a way, you can think that is the more we advance to a new standard. So ADO before OLEDB, OLEDB before the ODBC. So all these are one generation after another. The newer generation always has a better capability to cover the previous generation's connectivity. So always use the newest one, and you will be able to connect into all sort of data source more or less easily, right? So that is the key. The original dream was just that if everybody issues SQL, every database should understand. But the real world is not that simple. Every company has their own standard. That is why all these connectivity technology uh, is hooking up. It's kind of like a lot of middlemen. Every one of this connectivity program or middlewares are a middleman, try to handle the job that uh, seem to be complicated by other programs. So that's typically it. So go ahead and take the quiz, and you will understand more about this particular chapter. And I only spent 12 minutes on this chapter. Great. I'll stop it here.